Okay, imagine the scenario. You're scrolling through Pinterest and you're looking for a photo reference for a new portrait, and you realize that you can actually draw any face from any angle. The Loomis head method empowers you to do just this. It's a three-dimensional head construction technique that allows you to visualize the skull in 3 dimensions. And in this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how and why that works. I'm also going to take you through the entire Loomis head method, looking at different portraits from different angles. Finally, I'm going to show you how to take these generic layouts and turn them into specific portraits of specific people, all while explaining how and why to use the Loomis head method, and most importantly, when to break the rules and when to let go of this technique altogether. The Loomis head method begins with the internal structure that is behind every face, and that is the skull. The skull consists of the cranium, which is basically your brain box, and the lower jaw. But for right now, we're going to remove the lower jaw and take a look at just this portion. Take a look at it from every angle. What three-dimensional shape is it most similar to? Exactly, it's most like a sphere. So we're going to begin with the circle, and then we're going to use some wrapping lines that represent the brow line and the midline so that we can turn this circle into a sphere.
So begin with the circle. I know you guys, circles can be tricky. Hold your pencil further back and use your shoulder to draw the circle. Do it several times until you get something that's going to work. Now create the midline, that line that goes through the face, breaking it into 2 symmetrical halves. This is going to go over to the right on this portrait. Then create the brow line, allowing this line to wrap around the head.
Compare our skull now to the actual three-dimensional sphere. There are some major differences, and to get our model of the sphere to more closely resemble the skull, we are going to slice the sides off.
In your drawing, you'll represent this by drawing an ellipse on the side of the face that shows that this side of the sphere has been flattened.
Now that we have our cranium in 3 dimensions and we have it at the appropriate angle, we're going to start modeling the face. When you look at the skull, notice how the cheekbones, the nose, and this part right above the teeth, the maxilla, all hang relatively flat right off of the skull.
We'll represent this by dropping the midline straight down past the bottom of the ball, and then creating some generic markers. This top mark represents the hairline, and that distance from the hairline to the brow ridge is going to be 1/3 of the face. We'll have this same measurement again that goes from the brow ridge to the bottom of the nose, and then again from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin, which I can extend back and create the jawline. With no ear in this reference, we're pretty much done. All we need to do is attach the head to a neck, look at the angles, and map something in relatively quickly.
Let's do the next one together. Go grab your sketchbook. Seriously, put the video on pause and go grab it so that you can practice along with me and internalize this Loomis head method.
Just like before, begin with a circle, and now you're going to find the midline. Take a look at how Scarlett Johansson's face is angled. She's looking over towards her right, up a little bit, and her head is angled. So we're going to pay attention to all of those markers when we create her midline and her brow ridge. You can always place your pencil and hover it over the brow line to get this angle just right. Now slice off that little chunk of the head. And I like to sometimes put this cross section so that it really looks flat. I popped this ear in a little bit early, but what I prefer that you do first is to drop the midline down and create those thirds from the hairline to the brow ridge, from the brow ridge to the nose, and from the nose to the bottom of the chin. Once you get the bottom of the chin, you can then draw and trace it back towards where the ear is. The ear is really going to line up between that middle third, between the brow ridge and the ear, and it's going to be angled back slightly towards the back of the head. We start with the sphere, we find the midline and the brow ridge, and now I really want to talk to you about that thin slice that we take off the side. When I teach this method, I get so many questions. How much am I cutting off, and where do I decide to put that? And unfortunately, the answer is that you have to eyeball it. There is no specific outline that Loomis gives other than saying a thin slice. So play around with different ellipses on the side of the face until you feel like something is right. And in a 3/4 view like this, you'll be taking a little bit off that far side as well. Keep in mind that this is a generic sketch, and if you don't get those slices perfect, this is just a layout. It's just something to get you started, and you can continue to build off and tweak and refine this as you complete your drawing. When we examine this photo reference, we see a different angle. We still have the cranium, so we start with the ball, and we still have a midline and a brow ridge. These things are always going to be consistent. But because her chin is pointed down, her forehead is closer to us. And so we're going to see just a little bit of foreshortening. This means that the forehead, or that space from the brow ridge to the hairline, is going to be a little bit bigger than the brow ridge to the bottom of the nose, and that space is going to be a little bit bigger than the nose to the bottom of the chin. And we're not going to have perfect thirds here. As I'm editing this video, I realized that my midline is at an angle that does not correspond to this photo reference. And that points out the beauty of the Loomis head method. Each one of these takes about like a minute and a half to lay out. And so if I make a mistake and I notice it before I come in with my details, I haven't lost much time at all. The Loomis head method is perfect for figuring out the orientation of the head, figuring out which way it is angled in space, and getting some very general proportions laid out before you come in and figure out where the individual features are. This is the last Loomis quick sketch, but don't go anywhere because I'm going to show you how I build a portrait on top of these structures. If you've learned something new, I would love it if you hit the like button. And if you'd like to see another video like this where I just do tons of Loomis quick sketches and you and I can do them together, let me know down in the comment section and I'll be sure to put one of those videos together soon. Because the Loomis layout method bases its construction on the skull and is very generic, you can use this and apply any drawing style of a human or a humanoid character on top of it. I am working with some quick sketches of Scarlett Johansson. Each of these drawings took about 15 to 25 minutes and allow me to focus on sketching proportions and features and working on likeness quickly. But you can also use the Loomis head method to build more complex heads and to work on a more developed, more refined portrait. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you in my next video. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss when that video goes live. So even though I have this layout and I know basically where the eyes are, I don't draw the eyes right away. Instead, I'm working really lightly with colored pencil and I'm just showing where the eye cavity is roughly and where the nose takes up space and where the mouth generally is. And most of these are falling along the lines that I've created. But every human is different. Every face is different. And sometimes you're going to need to make adjustments to this basic template. And you need to be able to be flexible with this Loomis head method. Otherwise, it's just going to get in the way and you're never going to achieve a likeness in your portraiture. So the first thing that I really want to anchor into your mind is that this is a very general template. It's something to get you started and to help you to orient the head in space. It is not something that you're going to apply your next layer in like a coloring book. When I say a coloring book, I'm thinking of this mindset where you're like, okay, now it's time to draw the eye and this is exactly where it goes. And now it's time to draw the nose and this is exactly where it goes. You want to build up your entire portrait regardless of what style you're using all together. When you build everything up together and you work in light layers and you continue to refine and adjust as you build on top of them, you're going to be able to catch mistakes early and adjust and adapt them. You're also going to be able to see how everything is coming together and how everything is working together. And this allows you to make educated design decisions.
The quick sketch method that I showed you at the beginning of this video is exactly how Andrew Loomis presents this method in his book, Drawing the Head and Hands. This is a phenomenal book with tons of examples, including a variety of portraits that have been built on the initial structure with different expressions, ages, angles, etc. I think this is a wonderful book and a great addition to any artist's library. And if you want to snag a copy, I have it linked along with all of my supplies and my sketchbook down in the video description.
While the Loomis head method is great for conceptualizing the head in 3 dimensions, it's not very good at spacing the features apart from each other or finding the width of the features. This isn't really part of the layout with those horizontal lines that run parallel to each other to mark the thirds of the face. So one thing that I noticed if I leaned too heavily into the Loomis method was that my features tended to get squished together or spread out a little bit. So one thing that you need to keep in mind is that you need to figure out how wide your eyes are and your nose are and the amount of space that your features take up after you figure out relatively where they fall on the skull. And a great way to do this is with little tick marks. Typically, the eyes are about an eye width apart, but this really only helps when you're looking at a face straight on. And that happens the minority of the time and is actually a pretty boring portrait. In a 3/4 view, you are going to see a little less of the eye that's turning away from you, and that eye is going to appear smaller. So you want to figure out how these eyes fit on the skull and about how much space they take up. Then I want you to step back and get a feel for how this is all working together before you go in with too much detail. Then you can add a little bit more and make sure that they work. If it makes sense for your workflow, get up and step away after you've laid a little bit in, or take your sketchbook into the bathroom and look at the reflection of your artwork in the mirror. See if you can find errors and issues with your proportions and the placement of your features before you get too far along. This is also really helpful for figuring out the width of the nose. Yes, usually the nose falls right between the eyes, but this is going to be different on each and every person. And sometimes that third line that you have, or that line that measures a third of the way down from the eyebrows, isn't super helpful. So I also implement other drawing strategies into this method. I'll use triangulation and draw a corner from the outside edge of the eyeball to the edge of the nose on my photo reference, and then I'll translate that over onto my drawing and make sure that those are happening at the same angle. Once you master the Loomis Quick Sketch, you have so many opportunities to develop your portraiture, and I recommend that you dive straight in with color. Check out this video for a step-by-step tutorial on layering colored pencils to add beautiful, rich colors to your portrait sketches.